Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The kitchen light flickers overhead, casting erratic shadows on the walls as I stand by the sink, eyes fixed on the clock. It's just past midnight, and Kate still hasn't come home. I'd heard the familiar excuses about needing some space, a few days with friends. I wanted to trust her, I really did, but the arguments had become too frequent, too heated. The distance between us had grown like a chasm I couldn't bridge. I'm cleaning up the remnants of a solitary dinner when I see the headlights of a car reflecting off the rain-slicked driveway. It's a low rumble, different from the roar of Kate's usual sedan. I glance at the clock again, 12:15 a.m. This doesn't fit with her friend's house narrative. My pulse quickens. I step outside into the cool night air, pulling my coat tighter around me. The driveway is slick and dark, illuminated only by the flickering street lamp. I spot my neighbor, Tim, sitting in his old beat-up sedan parked across the street. He's a bit of a recluse, always found tinkering with his car or working on some project in his garage. I squint through the rain-streaked windshield and see him hunched over the wheel, his face illuminated by the car's interior light. I walk over, intent on getting my lawnmower back. It's been over a month since I lent it to him. My knuckles rap against the window. Tim looks up, his face a mask of surprise. I catch a glimpse of his disheveled hair and tired eyes. "Hey, Tim," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was just wondering when you'd be returning my lawnmower." Tim's eyes dart nervously, and he mumbles something incoherent. I notice his hands are gripping the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. "Is everything okay?" I ask, noticing an odd tension in the air. Tim opens his mouth to respond, but a muffled noise catches my attention. I glance past him, through the open car window, and see something that makes my blood run cold. Kate's car is parked just behind Tim's sedan. My wife is stumbling out of the shadows, and as she draws closer, I see her movements are erratic, disheveled. And then I see him, my neighbor, his face contorted in pleasure, his eyes closed. The realization hits me like a punch to the gut. Kate is with him, her head bobbing slowly as she's engaged in something that's far more intimate than I'd ever imagined. The scene before me is like a nightmare I can't wake up from. My heart races, my vision narrows. The betrayal cuts deep. I step back, trying to collect my thoughts. I feel a surge of anger and helplessness. My mind whirls with thoughts of confrontation, revenge. I feel my hands ball into fists, the sting of betrayal sharp in my chest. Kate notices me then, her eyes wide with panic. She quickly pulls away from Tim, her face flushed. "Oh my God," she gasps, "it's not what it looks like." I can barely control the tremor in my voice as I snap, "Not what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like you're with him." I gesture toward Tim, who is now staring at the dashboard, too ashamed to meet my gaze. Kate stumbles over her words, trying to justify herself. "We were just, things haven't been great between us, and..." I cut her off. "Save it. I've seen enough." The night air is thick with tension as Kate tries to approach me, but I hold up my hand. "Don't. Just, don't." I turn on my heel and head back toward the house, leaving Kate standing there in the rain, her face a mix of desperation and shame. The reality of the situation settles over me like a heavy fog. I know that things will never be the same. I spend the rest of the night pacing the living room, my mind racing with plans. The betrayal has shattered any remnants of trust one had left. I feel a cold resolve building within me. If this is how it ends, then I will have to make it end on my terms. In the weeks that follow, the process of unraveling my life with Kate begins. The divorce papers are filed, and I make sure that every detail is handled with precision. The anger propels me forward, and though part of me wishes things could have been different, I know that what's done cannot be undone. As I sign the final papers and watch Kate walk away from the life we shared, I realize that this is just the beginning. The aftermath of this betrayal will shape the path ahead, and though I don't know what lies beyond, I'm determined to navigate this new reality with strength and purpose. Our paths, once intertwined, are now irrevocably separate. The morning after the confrontation is an eerie silence. I find myself in a state of shock, barely functioning. The house feels hollow, every creak of the floorboards echoing with the weight of what's happened. I go through the motions of daily life, shower, coffee, a quick glance at the mail, but nothing seems real. The phone rings around noon, jolting me from my daze. I glance at the caller ID. It's Greg, my best friend. He's been my confidant through this mess, even though I've barely talked about what's really going on. Hey, Greg, I say, trying to sound normal. Hey, man. I heard about what happened with Kate. Greg's voice is full of sympathy and concern. You okay? Not really, I admit. I'm just trying to get through the day. Greg is silent for a moment. Look, I know you probably don't want to talk about it, but I'm coming over. I think you need someone to be there. I'm about to refuse, but something in his voice makes me reconsider. All right, come on over. An hour later, Greg arrives. He's a tall guy with a no-nonsense attitude and a knack for cutting through the bullshit. He walks in with a grim expression, carrying a six-pack of beer and a pizza. We settle into the living room, the familiar weight of our conversations making the room feel a bit more like home. Let's not sugarcoat it, Greg says, cracking open a beer. What are you going to do about this? I take a deep breath and look at him. I don't know. I've already filed for divorce, and that's just the start. I'm not sure what to do next. You should get some advice, Greg suggests. Someone who knows the legal ropes. And maybe it's time to dig into why Kate did this. There's got to be more to it. I nod slowly, the idea taking root. You're right. I need to know what happened. Greg leans forward, a thoughtful expression on his face. You know, I've heard some things about Tim. He's not exactly known for being a stand-up guy. Really? I ask, surprised. Like what? Let's just say I've heard rumors, Greg says carefully. Nothing concrete, but people talk. Maybe there's a connection you don't know about. I feel a surge of anger and resolve. Then I'll find out. Thanks, Greg. I needed a push. A few hours later, I find myself at Tim's house. It's a small, run-down place on the edge of town. The overgrown lawn and peeling paint are a stark contrast to the neat, manicured look I used to maintain. I knock on the door, and after a moment, Tim answers, his face a mask of unease. Hey, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to talk to you. Tim looks around nervously. What about? Let's step outside, I suggest, wanting to avoid any potential eavesdroppers. He nods and leads me to the small porch. I don't have a lot of time, Tim says, glancing at his watch. What's up? I want to know why you and Kate, I start, but Tim cuts me off. Look, man, I don't know what you saw or heard, but it's not what you think, Tim says quickly. It was a mistake. A mistake. I scoff. Tim, you were having an affair with my wife. That's not just a mistake. Tim looks genuinely distressed. I know. And I'm sorry. But there's more to it. Kate's been. The door to Tim's house swings open abruptly, and a woman with a sharp, authoritative demeanor steps out. She's wearing a dark blue suit, her expression serious. Everything okay out here, Tim? She asks, her gaze shifting to me with a curious look. This is my ex, Tim stammers. We're just talking. The woman raises an eyebrow. I'm Detective Ramirez. Tim and I have been working on some cases together. If you have questions, you might want to speak to me. I'm taken aback. Detective? What are you talking about? Perhaps we should discuss this inside, Detective Ramirez suggests. There are details that need to be addressed. Reluctantly, I follow them inside. The living room is cluttered, filled with old newspapers and stacks of files. Detective Ramirez gestures for me to sit, and I take a seat, feeling out of place. Tim, Ramirez says, her tone more businesslike, why don't you start from the beginning? Tim takes a deep breath. I was approached by someone a few months ago. They offered me money to get close to Kate. I didn't know the full story, just that it was supposed to be some sort of test. A test? I ask incredulously. Yes, Ramirez says, nodding. It appears there's a larger scheme at play here, involving manipulation and deceit. We've been investigating these cases, but the connections were always loose. I feel a rush of confusion and anger. So, you're saying this wasn't just about Kate and me? It seems there's more to it, Ramirez confirms. We suspect there are other people involved, and your case might be part of a larger pattern. The weight of her words settles over me like a heavy fog. This wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was part of something bigger. My life had been a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was playing. As I leave Tim's house, the night air feels colder, more foreboding. I'm left with more questions than answers, and a determination to uncover the truth. The lines between right and wrong are blurring, and I'm stepping into a world where nothing is as it seems. The intrigue has only just begun, and I'm determined to find out what's really behind the deception. The next morning, I wake with a gnawing sense of urgency. Detective Ramirez's revelation has left me on edge, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm caught in the middle of something far more complex than a simple affair. The world outside seems oddly quiet as I prepare for the day, my mind racing with possibilities. I decide to start with the only lead I have, Tim's connection to this larger scheme. I make my way to the local coffee shop, a place Greg and I often frequented. The atmosphere is bustling, but I'm focused, scanning the room for any sign of Ramirez. As I sip my coffee, Greg arrives, his usual relaxed demeanor replaced by a look of concern. You look like you've been through a war, he says, sliding into the booth across from me. Feels like it, I reply. Detective Ramirez dropped a bombshell. This isn't just about Kate and me. There's something bigger at play. Greg raises an eyebrow. What do you mean? I'm not sure yet, I admit. But it seems Tim was part of something, a test or a scheme. And Ramirez said there are other people involved. Before Greg can respond, my phone buzzes with a message. It's from an unknown number, but the message is clear: meet me at the old warehouse on Elm Street. I have information you need. Trust no one. The message isn't signed, but it sends a shiver down my spine. Looks like I've got a lead, I tell Greg. I'm heading to a warehouse on Elm Street. I don't know who this is, but it could be important. Greg's eyes widen. That sounds risky. Are you sure you want to go alone? I don't have much of a choice, I say. But if anything happens, I'll text you the address. All right, but be careful, Greg warns. And let me know if you need backup. I finish my coffee, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. The warehouse is on the outskirts of town, a decrepit building that looks like it hasn't seen use in years. As I drive there, I try to calm my racing thoughts. Who could have sent the message? And what do they want to tell me? The warehouse looms large as I pull up. The structure is a grim silhouette against the cloudy sky, its windows boarded up and graffiti scrawled across the walls. I park a short distance away and approach cautiously, every sound amplified in the stillness. I reach the entrance, a heavy metal door hanging loosely on its hinges. Taking a deep breath, I push it open and step inside. The interior is dimly lit, filled with the musty smell of decay. I call out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" There's no immediate response, but I hear the faintest echo of footsteps. I move deeper into the warehouse, my footsteps echoing off the walls. As I turn a corner, I spot a figure standing in the shadows. It's a man, his face obscured by the dim light. "Are you the one who sent the message?" I ask, trying to sound more confident than I feel. The man steps forward, revealing a face I recognize. It's Stephen, a former colleague of mine from the financial firm I used to work for. He's a wiry man with a nervous energy, always in the middle of office gossip and schemes. "Stephen," I say, bewildered. "What are you doing here?" "Shoo," Stephen hisses, glancing around nervously. "We don't have much time. I'm here to help, but you need to understand what's really going on." I cross my arms, skepticism written on my face. "Help? Why should I trust you?" "Because," Stephen says, his voice low, "I've been following this too. The whole thing with Kate, it's not just a personal betrayal. There's a network of people who manipulate others for their own gain. Tim was just a pawn, and so were you." I'm taken aback. "What are you talking about? And why involve me?" "There's a lot you don't know," Stephen explains. "The affair was a setup, designed to get you out of the way. There are powerful people behind this, people who have a lot to lose if their plans are exposed. Why didn't you come forward sooner?" I demand. "And why should I believe you now?" Stephen looks around nervously. "Because I've seen the documents, the files that prove this is bigger than just a personal issue. But if they know I'm talking to you, I could be in danger." I feel a surge of anger and frustration. "Tell me everything you know." Stephen takes a deep breath. "Okay. There's a group that's been orchestrating these manipulations for years. They target influential people and use them to achieve their goals. Your case is part of a pattern. Kate was approached and manipulated into this, and Tim was just one of their tools." As Stephen speaks, I hear the distant sound of an approaching vehicle. My heart races. "We need to get out of here," I say urgently. "Someone's coming." We move quickly, making our way toward the exit. Stephen glances back nervously. "You have to be careful. They're always watching." I don't have time to process everything as we exit the warehouse and I drive away with Stephen. My mind is spinning with new information and the realization that I'm entangled in something far more dangerous than I ever imagined. As we part ways, Stephen's warning echoes in my mind. The intrigue is deeper than I thought, and the stakes are higher. I'm now not only fighting for justice but also trying to uncover a network of deceit that reaches far beyond my own personal tragedy. The road ahead is uncertain, but I know one thing for sure: I need to find out who's behind this and why my life was turned upside down. The next few days blur together in a haze of frantic activity and sleepless nights. I'm caught in a whirlwind of paranoia and urgency. Stephen's revelations have set me on edge, and I'm determined to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy that has ensnared my life. I enlist Greg's help in the search for answers, poring over documents and chasing down leads. We spend hours in my study, piecing together what little we know. The more we dig, the more convoluted the situation becomes. The network Stephen mentioned seems to have fingers in various pies: business deals, political maneuvering, and personal sabotage. My phone rings early one morning, shattering the silence. It's Detective Ramirez. Her voice is urgent, tinged with a seriousness I haven't heard before. "We need to meet. I have new information about the case." We arrange to meet at a local diner. I arrive first, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. The diner is a quiet spot, a refuge from the chaos of the outside world. Detective Ramirez walks in, her expression grave. She takes a seat and motions for me to join her. I've been digging into this network you mentioned, Ramirez begins, her tone low. It's not just a personal vendetta or a scheme for profit. There's a pattern here, a way of leveraging personal crises to manipulate people. I lean forward, my heart racing. And Kate? Where does she fit into this? She was targeted because of her connection to you, Ramirez explains. The goal was to destabilize your life, to create a scandal that would discredit you and make it easier for them to manipulate other high-profile individuals. I feel a surge of betrayal and anger. And Tim? What about him? Tim was a middleman, a pawn used to execute their plans, Ramirez says. But there's something more. The true mastermind is someone close to you. My mind races. Who? Who is it? Ramirez hesitates before answering. I've been tracking financial transactions and communications. The evidence points to someone who's been in your circle for a long time, someone who had access to your personal life and could orchestrate this from the shadows. The realization hits me like a ton of bricks. Greg, I whisper. It has to be Greg. Ramirez nods. It seems that way. We've uncovered evidence of his involvement, and it fits with the pattern we've seen. My mind reels as I absorb the shock. Greg, my best friend, the one who was supposed to have my back. I need to confront him, but I'm not sure how to handle it. Later that day, I confront Greg at his apartment. He looks surprised to see me, but there's an edge in his eyes that I hadn't noticed before. What's going on? He asks, trying to sound casual. I know everything, I say, my voice trembling with anger and betrayal. I know you've been working with the network, manipulating my life. Greg's face pales, but he quickly recovers. You don't understand. No, I cut him off. I understand perfectly. You were never my friend. You were just another player in their scheme. Greg's demeanor shifts from surprise to cold calculation. You've been a pawn all along, and so have I. This isn't just about you or me. It's about power, control. I'm filled with a mix of rage and sorrow. I trusted you, Greg. And you used that trust to betray me. Greg's eyes flash with a mixture of guilt and defiance. People like us don't get to play nice. We're all part of this game, whether we like it or not. Before I can respond, Greg's phone rings. He glances at it, his expression tightening. I need to take this. I watch as he answers the call, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. The realization dawns on me that Greg's part in this conspiracy goes deeper than I imagined. He's not just a collaborator, he's a key player. I decide I've had enough. I can't stay here any longer. As Greg continues his call, I slip out of the apartment and head to my car. My mind is a storm of emotions, and I know that I need to distance myself from everyone involved. As I drive away, the weight of the last few weeks presses down on me. The deception has been more than I could have ever imagined, and the people I thought I knew best have turned out to be the greatest threats. The final confrontation with Greg is both a personal and emotional reckoning. The ties that once bound us have been severed by betrayal and deceit. Our paths have diverged, and the trust that once existed between us is irrevocably shattered. In the end, I'm left with the cold reality of a world where personal connections can be twisted and manipulated for sinister purposes. My life has been turned upside down, and the trust one once had in those around me has been irreparably damaged. As I drive away from Greg's apartment, I realize that the only way forward is to rebuild my life from the ground up. The intrigue and deception that have plagued me are now behind me, but the scars of betrayal will remain. I'm left to navigate a world where trust is scarce and the past is a constant shadow. The final twist is not just the revelation of Greg's betrayal, but the profound realization that in a world full of deception, sometimes the hardest part is facing the truth about those we thought we knew best. Our paths will never cross again, and the only thing left is to move forward, carrying the weight of what's been lost and the hope of finding a new beginning.